From now on, I'll take care of our son, so you're no longer needed. While I was hospitalized, my beloved home was slowly being taken over by my mother-in-law. Faced with her one-sided claims, I anxiously looked to my husband for support. However, his cold gaze told me all I needed to know before he even spoke. Of course it's for the best. This is my and my mom's house. You're no longer needed, so get out. Crushed by my mama's boy husband's words, I felt my spirit break. Fine, if I'm no longer needed, I'll leave, I said, resigned to leaving my own home. But this would mark the beginning of my husband's downfall. Fueled by a desire for revenge, my heart burned with resolve. I am Maria, currently 49 years old. I live with my high-earning husband, William, but I've continued working instead of quitting. We met again at a high school reunion 10 years after graduation. William, more mature and suave than in high school, seemed incredibly attractive to me. After exchanging contacts somewhat naturally, we went on several dates and got married after 2 years of dating. My husband is quite capable at work. He changed jobs from the company he was with when we first started dating. William climbed the corporate ladder at a young age, reaching an executive position at a multinational finance company. Not content with just that, he also serves on the boards of about 2 other companies, pushing his annual income to well over $2 million. Though I could live comfortably on William's income, I chose to keep working at a design company. I find staying at home too confining. It's been 20 years since I married my husband. I believe our marriage is the envy of our friends from the same generation. However, the longer you're with someone, the more you notice their flaws. William, once a gentleman who led me, now seems self-centered and domineering, typical of men in their 40s. Although I'm no beauty queen, we had a stable relationship for better or worse. In times like these, I'm grateful for my job. The workload helps me forget his unpleasant side, and I love my job, which also serves as my stress reliever. Recognized for my long-standing dedication, I now lead a team at my company. The job involves lots of overtime and even monthly international trips for competitions. I pride myself on my strong sense of responsibility, which is why I feel fulfilled in my current position. I sense that my subordinates admire and respect me. However, this also sometimes pushes me to my limits. Lately, I just can't seem to shake off this tiredness. You okay? At least take care of yourself properly, William said dismissively, causing my blood to boil. On top of my headache, I'm fine. This is nothing, I replied stubbornly. Both of us take pride in our careers and hate being criticized about our work. His snide comments only make me more defiant. Usually I take a day off for some physical therapy, but this time my stubbornness got the better of me. As a result, I collapsed at work and had to be rushed to the hospital by ambulance. Maria, are you okay? Hearing the panicked voice of my subordinate as the last sound, I felt regret as my consciousness faded away. This regret was just the beginning of an unexpected turn of events. When I woke up, the first thing I saw was a stark white ceiling. The bed was made with clean sheets, and beside the window, there was a vase adorned with a bouquet of colorful flowers. Realizing I was in a hospital didn't take long, and I let out a deep sigh. This is the worst. I've caused trouble for everyone. I tried to organize my schedule in my head and searched for the nurse call button, likely beside my pillow. "Excuse me, I've woken up," I said to the nurse. After a short wait, a nurse arrived in a hurry, accompanied by a doctor. The doctor asked me several questions about how I was feeling, and I answered them smoothly. "The direct cause of your collapse is probably overwork. However, is there another cause?" the doctor asked. I was aware that I had been feeling tired, and it wasn't surprising to hear I collapsed from overwork. But the doctor, flipping through my chart, looked resolved as he informed me, "There's a possibility you have a tumor. We can't say for sure without further tests, so would you be able to stay in the hospital for a while?" It felt like a blow to the head. The doctor's words went in one ear and out the other. I could hear them, but they made no sense, and I was stunned. "Don't worry, Maria. We'll conduct thorough tests and start treatment. For now, just rest and regain your strength." "Yes, okay, I understand," I replied weakly, my hands trembling as I clutched my smartphone. The first person I called was my husband, William. "Honey, I collapsed from overwork, but they say I need more tests for something else." "I see. So you'll be staying in the hospital for a while then. Got it. Wait just a minute. I'm not done." I had conveyed all the necessary information, but my husband responded briefly and unilaterally ended the call. A sigh escaped me as I heard the beep of the disconnected call. I wanted to ask him to bring some night clothes and other necessities, but I figured it was probably hopeless to expect that. The news of my health condition had already made me anxious, and his lack of concern was hard to bear. Wiping away the tears that had gathered at the corners of my eyes, I decided to contact a colleague from work. An old friend and colleague brought everything I needed to the hospital after finally managing my packed schedule. I sank into the clean hospital bed, facing my anxieties about the future. The doctor explained the detailed schedule for my tests and discussed possible diagnosis with me. If it turned out to be a malignant tumor, early detection meant it could be treated with surgery or medication. Despite my worries, the kindness of the people around me was overwhelming. By the second day of my hospital stay, my room was overflowing with gifts and bouquets. From the day I was admitted, colleagues, subordinates, and even business partners had come to visit. It's amazing. I've never seen a private room so full of get-well gifts. I'm so grateful. I never realized people cared about me this much. Illness is partly mental, so let's turn everyone's well wishes into strength and keep fighting, I reflected. The attending doctor came to check on me almost daily and always offered such encouraging words. In contrast, my husband hadn't even called, let alone visited. I understood he was busy with work, but a simple call to check on me would have been nice. As the years passed, my love for him had faded, and all I could do was sigh in sadness. 2 months into my hospital stay, I began intensive treatment for the tumor, battling the side effects of the medication. Despite suffering from headaches and nausea, the constant visits from my work colleagues were uplifting. Amidst all this, there was a time when I tried calling my husband just once. It was 9:00 p.m., a time when his work would likely have been finished. After a few rings, his deep voice answered from the other end of the phone. "What's this? Calling at such a time?" "I just wanted to see how things were on your end." "Nothing's changed." "Is that so?" I was foolish to hope he might ask, "Are you okay?" William's responses were mechanical, like he wanted to end the call immediately. Then I heard an unfamiliar voice on the other end of the phone. "William, who's calling at this hour?" I asked. "It's Maria." William's voice sounded distant. "Is someone there with you?" William sighed in annoyance and answered, "It's just my mother. If there's nothing else, I'm going to hang up." As usual, the call was abruptly ended. The impersonal tone of the disconnected call made my heart ache even more. What used to be an enviable marriage had now become nothing more than a cohabitation in form only. Despite my desire to recover from my illness, the thought of returning to that cold marriage was frightening. Why did it come to this? Fortunately, as my hospital stay reached half a year, my condition had almost stabilized. "From now on, we'll monitor your condition with regular visits. If there's no recurrence, you can be considered nearly cured. But don't let your guard down. Be mindful of your diet and don't overwork," my doctor scolded gently. "Thank you so much for everything. Just make sure not to push yourself too hard." I expressed deep gratitude for the care I had received. "Absolutely," the doctor emphasized, and I nodded with a relieved smile. Several times, of course, William wasn't at the hospital entrance. It was my sister Iris who came. "Are you going to take a break from work for a while?" she asked. "Yeah, I'll take the rest of this month off and then gradually start working from home." "That's good. Just like the doctor said, don't push yourself too hard." "You worry too much, sis. I'll be fine," my sister said the same, and all I could do was give a tired smile in response. My sister's car pulled up in front of the house. The get-well gifts had already been delivered, and I only had a small duffel bag with me. Feeling like I was returning from a short trip, I waved goodbye to Iris. Well, he's probably not back yet anyway. It was just before noon, and the house was likely empty. Typical of William, he wouldn't have done any housework while I was away and probably ate out for meals. Imagining the dusty state of the house, I sighed again. Using the key I hadn't used in a while, I opened the front door and immediately felt something was off. Our house, while not minimalist, had few belongings. We avoided clutter like ornaments and photo frames, finding that storing them on our smartphones was sufficient. We managed our schedule online, so there was no need for calendars, and the walls were adorned with only a favorite art panel. But now, there were more than 5 pairs of women's shoes scattered at the entrance, and several unidentifiable cardboard boxes lay haphazardly in front of the shoe cabinet. "What's all this?" I muttered in panic. I rushed to the living room without even bothering to arrange my shoes. I could hear the TV and the voices of a man and a woman from the living room. Despite being overwhelmed with fear due to the unknown situation, I couldn't stop my advancing footsteps. I opened the door to the living room with a loud click, and there were my husband William and my mother-in-law. "Oh, you're back," said my mother-in-law with cold eyes. "Why are you here, and shouldn't William be at work?" "I took the day off because Mom wanted to go shopping. Was today your charge day, William?" My mother-in-law and William, sitting side by side on the sofa, glanced at me disinterestedly. The living room was overflowing with strange decorations, old-fashioned floral curtains, a tall houseplant, and piles of magazines on the floor. The kitchen, which should have been equipped with silicone kitchen tools, now had utensils and dishes I'd only seen at my in-laws, including items I couldn't imagine when we used them. What's going on here? As I looked around, the house had changed so much in the past 6 months that I felt dizzy. My mother-in-law spoke mockingly amidst my confusion. "What do you mean? Now it's me and William living here. This is mine and William's house." Her words made no sense to me. William turned his mocking gaze to me. "Frozen in shock, Mom has been taking care of everything in the house, covering your inadequacies. You should be grateful." Despite everything, I had been hospitalized for treatment after falling ill, not due to any shortcomings on my part. My anger at my husband, who showed no concern, continued to build. "You really are a terrible wife for abandoning the house for half a year." "I didn't abandon it. I was hospitalized. You never even visited me," I retorted strongly, only for my mother-in-law to snap back with a red face. "How dare you say that? William has been working hard every day and you were just lying in the hospital. I didn't choose to be hospitalized. Basic self-care is essential for an adult. Why should I sympathize with your poor health habits?" "That's right. You should be supporting your husband. Aren't you his wife?" Thinking back, she had always been like this since the beginning of our marriage. My mother-in-law, a stay-at-home wife supported by her husband in management for nearly 40 years, took pride in being a housewife and saw me, who continued to work after marriage, as an adversary. "Isn't it a woman's role to look after the home, William? Well, I earn enough, and if necessary, I can make Maria quit her job. Mom," my father-in-law was a passive husband who showed no interest in home affairs and left everything, including child-rearing, to my mother-in-law. As a result, she doted on her only son, William, who became overly attached to his indulgent mother. This intensified after my father-in-law passed away 5 years ago. William stayed at his parents' house 3 nights a week, and was in daily contact with his mother. I was always worried. That's why I was against this marriage. I'm sorry, Mom, if I had listened to you. Even as I stood there in shock, the two of them continued to speak as they pleased. I've reached my limit. Enough. Why is my mother-in-law living here in the first place? I yelled, confronting their twisted display of parent-child affection. This is our house. I never agreed to live together, I declared firmly. The atmosphere froze for a moment. William's face turned red with anger, and my mother-in-law also flushed with rage. How ungrateful. Who do you think has been supporting this household? This is my son's house. And while you were in the hospital, I was the one supporting him. That's right. You haven't fulfilled a single duty as a wife. Right now it's me and William living here. From now on, I'll take care of our son, so you're no longer needed. You really are a terrible wife for abandoning the house for half a year. I didn't abandon it. I was hospitalized. You never even visited me. I retorted strongly, only for my mother-in-law to snap back with a red face. How dare you say that? William has been working hard every day, and you were just lying in the hospital. I didn't choose to be hospitalized. Basic self-care is essential for an adult. Why should I sympathize with your poor health habits? That's right. You should be supporting your husband. Aren't you his wife? Thinking back, she had always been like this since the beginning of our marriage. My mother-in-law, a stay-at-home wife, supported by her husband in management for nearly 40 years, took pride in being a housewife and saw me, who continued to work after marriage, as an adversary. Isn't it a woman's role to look after the home, William? Well, I earn enough, and if necessary, I can make Maria quit her job. Mom, my father-in-law was a passive husband who showed no interest in home affairs and left everything, including child-rearing, to my mother-in-law. As a result, she doted on her only son, William, who became overly attached to his indulgent mother. This intensified after my father-in-law passed away 5 years ago. William stayed at his parents' house 3 nights a week and was in daily contact with his mother. I was always worried. That's why I was against this marriage. I'm sorry, Mom, if I had listened to you. Even as I stood there in shock, the two of them continued to speak as they pleased. I've reached my limit. Enough. Why is my mother-in-law living here in the first place? I yelled, confronting their twisted display of parent-child affection. This is our house. I never agreed to live together, I declared firmly. The atmosphere froze for a moment. William's face turned red with anger, and my mother-in-law also flushed with rage. How ungrateful. Who do you think has been supporting this household? This is my son's house, and while you were in the hospital, I was the one supporting him. That's right. You haven't fulfilled a single duty as a wife. Right now it's me and William living here. From now on, I'll take care of our son, so you're no longer needed. How can you say that, William? Are you really okay with this? I looked at my husband in desperation, hoping for some support against the one-sided accusations. So I often stayed over at her place in her familiar apartment. Sitting on the sofa, I confided everything to Iris, being kicked out of the house right after my discharge, and the terrible things my husband had said and done up until now. As the story progressed, Iris's expression grew stern, and by the end, she was shaking with anger. What awful people, Maria. Let me give them a piece of my mind. It's okay. I don't want anything to do with them anymore. Seeing my sister angrier than myself somehow calmed me down. I soothed her, who looked ready to storm out barefoot, and shared my plan for what to do next. You're a formidable woman, my sister Iris said with a smile, and I was surprised. That's right. I'm capable and earn enough to live on my own. I don't need to be afraid or hurt by those two anymore. You know, I'm actually quite smart and resourceful. I feel silly for worrying so much. Thanks to my sister, I felt even more composed. Thinking about my future plans, I couldn't help but smile. 3 months later, when I had returned to work and was busy in my office as usual, my smartphone began to ring insistently. I looked up from the documents and saw the screen. Quicker than expected, it was William's name as the caller ID. It had been a while since we last spoke, but I answered the phone as if nothing was amiss. "Hello. Yes, hey, what's going on?" "A real estate agent is at the house." "Oh, is that so?" I replied in a detached tone, which seemed to take William aback, causing him to stumble over his words. "You must have called for a reason, right?" This was a line I often heard from him. "Don't talk to me unless you have something to say." It was probably one of the most frequent harsh remarks I had received. "Why do we have to leave the house?" William continued, his voice filled with panic. I decided it was time to confront him with the truth. "Remember when we first got married and I said I wanted a house? You told me you wouldn't contribute a single penny." Indeed, when we were building the house, William had no interest in it and refused to contribute financially. So I used my own savings to buy the house and took out a mortgage in my name. I had paid off that mortgage with my salary, making the house legally mine. "That house isn't yours, it's mine, so I can do whatever I want with it, right? You guys don't need a house bought by someone as useless as me," I said with as much sarcasm as I could muster, leaving William speechless. It seemed his beloved mother was also there as she snatched the phone from him and began berating me with spitting fury. "Enough. Why do you get to do whatever you want with this house? You must have leached off William's money to pay for it." "Ah, you must not know because you never took an interest in me. I'm currently the CEO of a design company, earning more than William does annually, but I kept quiet about it, thinking it might hurt his pride. I had steadily built my career at this design company, learned multiple languages to communicate with overseas clients, and my efforts and enthusiasm had led to my appointment as CEO 5 years ago. William, never showing interest in my career, had probably forgotten about it. And though he was a capable man earning $2 million a year, he was also a big spender, luxury cars he never drove, designer brand sleepwear, infamous for womanizing and drinking habits among our peers. Moreover, I was aware of his multiple affairs, which he thought he had kept hidden. William has been living quite extravagantly, and we're still legally married. Well, we'll probably have to discuss this further with lawyers. Wait just a minute? That's not fair, Maria. Just so you know, the house has already been sold. You might want to quickly pack up all those tacky items and leave. I could hear William's faint voice and his mother berating him in the background. "Wait, let's talk. Talk about this, Maria, please." Disregarding everything, I ended the call unilaterally. Hearing my pathetic husband's voice was oddly satisfying. Afterward, I successfully divorced him through a lawyer. I also made sure to receive substantial alimony payment for his verbal abuse towards me and for his past misconduct. Furthermore, his extravagant lifestyle and the stress from this incident led to multiple mistakes at work. In the competitive world of multinational corporations, incompetence quickly leads to dismissal. Consequently, William lost his job, further straining his finances. Meanwhile, I continued to stay at Iris's house, but I started noticing strange things. I felt like I was being followed when I returned home, and I received numerous prank calls from unknown numbers. I never expected them to go this far. Thankfully, there was no direct harm, but I knew it was only a matter of time. I hurried to consult with the police. They promised to increase patrols, and perhaps feeling the pressure, one night my ex-husband and ex-mother-in-law brazenly showed up at my sister's house. "It's all your fault my son got fired because of you. There's no job, no money left. It's all your fault, so you need to take responsibility." Apparently, my ex-husband, even with reduced income, continued his lavish lifestyle until his savings ran out, leading to his dismissal from all his jobs. I shielded my frightened sister and quickly contacted the nearest police station. The two were then taken to the police station. After that incident, I decided to leave my sister's house. Thinking it was just a place to sleep, I opted to live in a hotel for a while. I had an idea for a new place, but wasn't quite ready to make a move yet, emotionally speaking. Then, a significant event finally brought my tumultuous 40s to a close. It happened one evening when I returned to the hotel exhausted from work. In the lobby, I saw two familiar figures. Finally found you. You're going to pay up today. Please don't make a scene. My ex-husband looked aged beyond his 40s, and I sighed deeply. His shirt was wrinkled, and his pants seemed unwashed for days. I hurriedly ushered the out-of-place pair into my hotel room. Enough already. You're causing a disturbance. That's my line. Because of you, our lives are a mess. My ex-mother-in-law, tears and snot streaming down her face, reached for my chest. I dodged just in time, and she fell to the floor. Their pitiful state was evident. They were driven to desperation. You don't mess with me. Give me back my money. Desperate people can exhibit surprising strength. I regretted letting them into my room, realizing too late my mistake. My ex-husband's frail arms grabbed my chest with unexpected force. Let go of me. I kicked a nearby trash can, making a loud noise in an attempt to resist. My ex-mother-in-law was cowering on the floor, and my enraged ex-husband was beside her. Just when I felt my life was in danger, the door burst open. "Are you okay?" A person, seemingly a janitor, yelled, wielding a mop like a weapon and advancing towards my ex-husband. "Stop, stop." Startled, my ex-husband released me and cowered on the floor. The hotel front desk had promptly called the police, and this time my ex-husband and ex-mother-in-law were taken into custody. Previously, they had been released with a stern warning, but this time they were officially charged. Already struggling to find a job, my prideful ex-husband now had a criminal record, making re-employment even more difficult. Eventually, I heard through the grapevine that they were living meagerly near a riverside. What a tumultuous 40s that was, he said, cutting his steak elegantly in a softly illuminated restaurant. It's surprising being almost 50 and all this happening, but it's really good that you didn't get seriously injured. His smiling gaze made me feel bashful, so I quickly sipped my red wine to hide it. Ever since my discharge, he had been my attending physician, and I've been in his care for many years. Thanks to him, there has been no recurrence of the tumor, and I've been living a peaceful life privately. We grew closer, and now we have settled into a relationship as lovers. Well, I doubt there will be any more drama like this, so I want to spend the rest of my life peacefully. Yeah, that sounds good. He finished his main course and slowly took a small box out of his breast pocket. Inside the box was a ring set with my birthstone. Will you give me your life to take care of from now on? I thought back to my lonely and joyless marriage. My job was my only solace, and I had pushed myself too hard because of it. I failed to see the true nature of people, causing a huge commotion that even involved my sister. Thank you. I'm so happy. The gem on my left ring finger was like a light shining on my life. My 40s were tough and full of scars, but now more happiness than ever before awaits me. Smiling at him, I felt excited about our future together.
I stood in the kitchen, the aroma of brewed coffee hanging in the air, when Arthur's words sliced through the calm like a knife. "Evelyn, we've decided to live with Ethan and Lisa, so you need to leave." His voice, once warm and loving, now held a chilling finality. I blinked, disbelieving. The room spun slightly as I tried to comprehend his words. Lisa, standing beside him with arms crossed, chimed in with a sneer. "Yeah, it's about time. You've been nothing but a freeloader, Evelyn." A freeloader? Me? The absurdity of it stung. I had been the backbone of this family's finances for years, while Arthur played the role of the struggling artist, and now this? My gaze shifted from Arthur to Lisa, and then back to Arthur. He avoided my eyes, his face an emotionless mask. Anger and disbelief churned in my stomach. "Is this some kind of sick joke?" I asked, my voice shaking. "No joke, Evelyn. We think it's best for everyone," Arthur said, his tone devoid of the warmth I once knew. The man I married, the man I built a life with, was now evicting me from my own home with the help of our son's wife. The absurdity of it all was overwhelming. I wanted to scream, to shout, to make them see the injustice. But all I could muster was a hollow laugh. "You'll regret this," I said, the words coming out colder than I intended. Arthur's eyes finally met mine, but there was no remorse there, just a blank stare. "Just pack your things and go, Evelyn. It's for the best." I looked around the kitchen, the heart of our home where I'd cooked countless meals, where we'd shared so many memories. And now they were casting me out like an unwanted guest. "I'll leave," I said, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. "But remember this, Arthur, you'll regret this day." I turned, leaving them standing in the kitchen, and walked to our bedroom. My bedroom, the room where I had spent over 2 decades of my life, now just a hollow reminder of a love that had withered away. I packed a suitcase with clothes and essentials, grabbed my work laptop, bank book, and some valuables, and headed for the door. As I passed the living room, I saw them, sitting together, already erasing my existence from their lives. "You think you've won," I said, pausing at the door, "but this isn't the end. It's just the beginning." Without waiting for a response, I walked out, the door closing behind me with a finality that echoed in my heart. As I drove to a nearby hotel, my mind raced with plans and possibilities. They thought they could discard me, but they were wrong. I was Evelyn Carter, and I would not go down without a fight. This betrayal would not go unpunished. I checked into the hotel and lay on the bed, staring at the ceiling. The events of the day replayed in my mind, fueling a fire within me. They had unleashed something in me, something fierce and unyielding. I would rebuild my life, but not before making sure Arthur and Lisa understood the gravity of their mistake. They had underestimated me, and that was their biggest mistake. As I drifted into a restless sleep, one thought remained clear in my mind. This was not the end, but a new beginning. A beginning where I would take back control of my life and make them rue the day they crossed Evelyn Carter. The night at the hotel was restless, each tick of the clock a reminder of my shattered life. In the dim light of dawn, memories flooded in, bittersweet and sharp. I met Arthur when life was simpler, filled with dreams and possibilities. He was a graphic designer with a creative spark that ignited something in me. Our courtship was a whirlwind, a blend of passion and promise. We married young, and soon Ethan came along, completing our little family. But time has a way of eroding even the strongest foundations. Arthur's once passionate drive for his work dwindled into complacency. I continued working at a food manufacturing company, my career progressing steadily. It was my salary that kept us afloat, especially when Arthur decided to leave his stable job to pursue freelance work. "Are you sure about this, Arthur?" I had asked, concern lacing my words. He was confident, almost dismissive. "I'll get work from my contacts. Plus, you're doing great with your job." My job, which he casually referred to as a side gig, was the lifeline of our finances. His ignorance of my professional worth was a growing wedge between us. It was during this time that Helen, Arthur's mother, became a central part of our lives. Her health was failing, and I found myself taking on the role of her caregiver. It seemed natural. She was family, after all. But Arthur's lack of involvement was a bitter pill to swallow. "Why don't you help more with your mother?" I once asked, frustration evident in my voice. Arthur just shrugged, his attention more on his designs than on my words. It was always about his work, his needs, never about Helen or me. As I lay in the hotel bed, the hurt from years of being undervalued and overlooked simmered within me. They had taken my kindness for weakness, my silence for submission. But no more. I would show them the strength of a woman scorned, a woman who had given her all only to be discarded. My plan began to take shape in the early morning light. It was time for Arthur and Lisa to face the consequences of their actions. They thought they had removed a problem from their lives, but in reality, they had ignited a fire. I would start with Arthur's finances. It was time he learned the true value of the money I brought into our household. I knew his freelance work wasn't as lucrative as he pretended. His pride would crumble under the weight of financial realities. And Lisa, with her smug sense of entitlement, would learn that her actions had repercussions. I remembered her disdain, her condescending words. She had no idea about the struggles and sacrifices I had made for this family. I rose from the bed, a new determination coursing through me. I would not be a victim of their cruelty. I would be the architect of their comeuppance. As the sun rose, casting a warm glow through the window, I felt a sense of empowerment. Evelyn Carter was no longer just a name. It was a symbol of resilience and retribution. They had underestimated me, but they would soon learn the cost of their betrayal. This was not just about revenge. It was about justice. And I would have it, no matter what it took. The first rays of sunlight brought clarity and resolve. I checked out of the hotel with a single goal in mind, to begin my carefully crafted plan of retribution against Arthur and Lisa. Returning home to gather the rest of my belongings was a calculated move. I needed to see Arthur to gauge his reactions to feed the fire of my resolve. The house felt different as I stepped in, colder, unwelcoming. Arthur was in the living room, his back to me, lost in his thoughts. "I've come for the rest of my things," I announced, my voice steady. He turned, a flicker of surprise crossing his face before it settled into an indifferent mask. "Fine. Take whatever you need." As I moved through the house, memories taunted me, but I pushed them aside. This was no time for sentimentality. It was a time for action. In our bedroom, I quickly sorted through our shared life, compartmentalizing emotions, focusing on the task. Clothes, personal items, some documents. I was methodical, leaving no trace of myself behind. Arthur hovered at the doorway, watching. "Evelyn, are you sure about this?" His question was a mix of confusion and a faint hint of concern. It was almost laughable. "You made your choice, Arthur. Now live with it," I replied, without looking at him. I could feel his gaze on me, but I didn't falter. This was the man who had underestimated me, who had pushed me out of my own life. No more. The final item I packed was a photo of us in happier times. I stared at it, a bitter smile on my lips. Then, without a second thought, I left it on the dresser, a reminder of what he had lost. As I carried my belongings to the car, Arthur's voice stopped me. "Evelyn, about the finances." I turned, meeting his eyes. "What about them?" We might need to discuss how we'll handle things moving forward." "Oh, now you're concerned about finances?" My voice was tinged with sarcasm. "Don't worry, Arthur. You'll manage. After all, I was just a side gig, remember?" His expression faltered, guilt and realization dawning. But it was too late for regrets. I drove away without looking back, the chapter of Arthur and me firmly closed. But this was just the beginning. My mind raced with plans, each more satisfying than the last. I knew Arthur's weaknesses, his pride, his finances, his superficial understanding of my contributions. I would use these to my advantage. He would learn the hard way the value of what he had so callously discarded. And Lisa, her arrogance, would be her downfall. I would make sure of it. She thought she could step into my life, take my place without consequence. She was sorely mistaken. I found a small apartment, a temporary refuge, as I plotted my next moves. It was modest but sufficient for my needs. As I unpacked, the reality of my situation sank in. I was alone, but I was also free. Free to rebuild, free to exact revenge, free to be the woman I was meant to be. That night, as I lay in bed in my new apartment, I felt a surge of empowerment. They had pushed me to the edge, but I had emerged stronger, more determined. Evelyn Carter would no longer be a victim. She would be a force to be reckoned with. Settled in my new apartment, I strategized my next moves. The first step was to confront the financial facade Arthur had constructed. It was time he faced the reality of our situation, the reality he so conveniently ignored. I started by securing my financial assets. I transferred my savings to a new account, ensuring Arthur had no access. This was my hard-earned money, and I would not let him squander it any longer. Next, I prepared for the inevitable legal battle. I contacted a lawyer, someone known for their tenacity and success in divorce cases. As I explained my situation, the lawyer nodded, understanding the gravity of my case. "We'll make sure you get what you deserve, Mrs. Carter," she assured me, her voice firm and confident. I felt a sense of relief, knowing I had a professional in my corner. This wasn't just about money, it was about justice. A few days later, I received a call from Arthur. His voice was strained, a hint of desperation creeping in. "Evelyn, we need to talk about the divorce and the finances." I agreed to meet, curious to see how he would handle this confrontation. We met at a quiet cafe, a neutral ground for what was to be a decisive discussion. Arthur looked worn, the stress of the situation clearly taking its toll. "Evelyn, I think we rushed into this. Maybe we can work things out?" His plea was pathetic, a stark contrast to the confident man I once knew. "Work things out? You threw me out, Arthur. You made your choice." He flinched at my words, but I felt no sympathy. This was the bed he had made. "We can't afford a divorce, Evelyn, not with my financial situation." "Oh, now you admit it," I retorted, my voice laced with scorn. "You're finally facing reality." Arthur's eyes darted around the cafe, his pride wounded. I thought we could come to an agreement, without lawyers." I leaned in, my gaze steady. "You want an agreement? Fine. I want $10,000. That's my price for an amicable divorce." Arthur's face paled. "10,000? I don't have that kind of money." "That's not my problem, Arthur. You wanted me out. You pay the price." He struggled for words, his facade crumbling. I'll see what I can do." I stood up, my chair scraping against the floor. "You have 1 week, Arthur, 1 week to give me what I'm owed." As I left the cafe, I could feel Arthur's eyes on me, but I didn't look back. This was more than just a financial transaction. It was a statement. I was no longer the woman he could manipulate and discard. Back in my apartment, I allowed myself a small smile. The tables were turning. Arthur was finally understanding the cost of his betrayal. And this was just the beginning. There was more to come, and I would make sure he paid every penny of the emotional debt he owed me. The week after confronting Arthur was a whirlwind of activity. I found solace in action, each step a move towards reclaiming my life. But the true test came when Arthur called to arrange the exchange of the $10,000. We met at the same cafe, a public space where emotions couldn't easily run amok. Arthur was there first, looking more defeated than ever. He handed me an envelope, his hand trembling slightly. "This is everything I could gather," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. I didn't count the money there. I didn't need to. The look in his eyes told me it was all there. "Consider this the end of our chapter, Arthur." As I turned to leave, I could feel his gaze heavy on my back. But I walked away without hesitation. This was more than a financial transaction. It was a reclaiming of my dignity. Back in my apartment, I counted the money. Each bill was a testament to my resilience, a down payment on my new life. But it wasn't the end of my plan. Not yet. The next step was Ethan and Lisa. Arthur's betrayal was one thing, but their complicity stung deeper. It was time they faced their own consequences. A few days later, the opportunity presented itself. Ethan called, his voice strained. "Mom, we need to talk. Can you come over?" I agreed, curious about what prompted his sudden request. At their house, the atmosphere was tense. Ethan fidgeted nervously, while Lisa's usual arrogance was replaced by unease. "What's this about, Ethan?" I asked, my tone neutral. "It's about Dad," Ethan began, his eyes avoiding mine. "He's in a bad place, financially. We might lose the house." Lisa chimed in, her voice laced with frustration. "And it's your fault with that ridiculous demand for money." My heart hardened at her words. "My fault? I was thrown out of my own home, Lisa. Did you expect me to just walk away without anything?" "But we're family," Ethan interjected, a note of desperation in his voice. "Family?" I scoffed. "Family doesn't treat each other the way you've treated me." Lisa's face reddened, her facade crumbling. "Well, what do you expect us to do now? You've taken everything." I stood, my resolve unshaken. "You expect sympathy from me? You made your choices. Now, live with them." As I left, I could hear them arguing, their voices a mix of blame and regret. But it was too late for apologies. They had shown their true colors, and now they were facing the consequences. In the solitude of my apartment, I reflected on the day's events. I had set out to reclaim my dignity, to make them understand the pain they had caused, and I had succeeded. But as I lay in bed that night, a sense of emptiness crept in. Revenge had brought satisfaction, yes, but it hadn't filled the void left by my shattered family. Yet I knew there was no going back. This was my path now, and I had to see it through to the end. As the days passed, my life settled into a new rhythm, one defined by independence and strength. Yet, the final act of my plan remained. It was time to expose Arthur and Lisa's true nature, to bring their deceit into the light. I began by digging into Arthur's financial affairs. It wasn't difficult. His desperation had made him careless. I discovered a trail of debt, poor investments, and most shockingly, evidence of an affair. It was the ammunition I needed. I confronted Arthur once more, this time at his office. It was a place where he felt in control, but I was about to shatter that illusion. "Arthur, we need to talk," I said, my voice calm yet assertive as I entered his office. He looked up, surprise etched on his face. "Evelyn, what are you doing here?" "I know about the affair, Arthur, and the debts," I stated, watching as his face drained of color. That's ridiculous," he stammered, but the guilt in his eyes betrayed him. "Don't insult my intelligence. I have proof," I countered, my words sharp. Arthur sank into his chair, the facade of confidence crumbling. "Evelyn, please, let's talk about this." "There's nothing to talk about. You've made your bed, now lie in it." My words were cold, a reflection of the void he had left in my heart. I left his office, leaving him to stew in his guilt and fear. But my plan wasn't complete. Lisa was next. I invited her for coffee, a public setting where she couldn't easily escape. When she arrived, her usual brashness was absent, replaced by caution. "Evelyn, what is this about?" she asked, her voice tinged with suspicion. "It's about you and Arthur," I said, meeting her gaze. "Your role in this whole mess." Lisa shifted uncomfortably. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Oh, but you do," I countered. "You encouraged Arthur's decisions, thinking it would benefit you. But now, you're just as responsible for the fallout." Lisa's facade cracked, her composure slipping. "You can't blame me for everything." "I can, and I do. You were part of this, Lisa. You can't escape that," I replied, my voice steady. Lisa looked away, unable to meet my gaze. She knew the truth, even if she couldn't admit it. As I left the cafe, I felt a sense of closure. I had exposed their deceit, their selfishness. They were left to face the consequences of their actions, just as I had faced mine. In the days that followed, the fallout from my revelations hit hard. Arthur's affair became public knowledge, his reputation tarnished. Lisa, caught in the crossfire, faced her own set of challenges. Her marriage with Ethan strained under the weight of the truth. I watched from a distance, my heart heavy yet vindicated. They had underestimated me, but I had shown them the strength of my resolve. Yet, in the quiet moments, I couldn't help but wonder if the price of revenge was too high. I had regained my dignity, but at what cost? The family I once loved was now broken, a casualty of the war I had waged. In the weeks following my confrontation with Arthur and Lisa, the repercussions of their actions, and mine, began to unfold in full view. The house that once echoed with our laughter now stood as a silent monument to broken dreams and betrayal. Arthur's career suffered greatly from the scandal. His clients left, unwilling to associate with a man whose personal life was in shambles. His financial troubles, once hidden behind a veil of pride, were now laid bare for all to see. Lisa, on the other hand, found herself isolated. Her marriage with Ethan strained to the breaking point as the truth of her manipulation and greed surfaced. The social circles that once welcomed her now turned their backs, leaving her to face the consequences of her actions alone. I heard through mutual acquaintances that Ethan had moved out, unable to cope with the continuous quarrels and the stark reality of their situation. Lisa, once so full of confidence and disdain, was now a shadow of her former self. And then there was Arthur. He called me one evening, his voice a mixture of sorrow and desperation. "Evelyn, I'm sorry. For everything." His apology, though late, was a testament to the depth of his downfall. "Your sorry can't undo what's been done, Arthur." I know I've made mistakes, but I'm paying for them now," he said, his voice breaking. "You're not the only one paying, Arthur. We all are," I replied, the weight of our collective pain heavy in my voice. We ended the call with no promises of reconciliation, only the somber acknowledgement of our shared history and its painful end. In the aftermath, I found solace in my newfound independence. The pain of the past was still there, a dull ache that ebbed and flowed with the days. But there was also a sense of freedom, a liberation from the chains of a loveless marriage and the suffocating deceit that had come with it. As I rebuilt my life piece by piece, I realized that revenge, though sweet, was also bittersweet. It had given me closure, yes, but at a cost. The family I had once cherished was now just a memory, a lesson learned in the hardest way possible. But life has a way of moving forward, and so did I. I found joy in small things, in the quiet moments of solitude, in the new beginnings that each day brought. The scars of the past remained, but they no longer defined me. I was Evelyn Carter, a woman who had faced her demons and emerged stronger. The journey had been long and fraught with pain, but I had survived, and in that survival I had found a new sense of self, a new purpose. As I look back now, I realize that the greatest revenge was not in the downfall of Arthur and Lisa, but in the rise of my own spirit. In the end, I had not just survived, I had thrived.